Hey guys, welcome back to the show for a rare Sunday afternoon live with our good friend Lisa DeMartino, and we'll get into who she is in a minute. But before that, I want to make a few quick announcements. Our conference is right around the corner, May 12th through the 15th in Grafton, Illinois. It's a 4-day disclosure event. If you're interested in joining us, tickets are still available at journeytotruth.online. We did have to make a change in the lineup. Melissa Morton, unfortunately, can't make it now, so we took her out of the lineup, and the schedule is back to what it was originally before her. She was an add-on anyway, so everything's just going back to normal the way it was. Nothing really changes that much. It actually just kind of frees up the schedule a little bit and allows for some more relaxation and free time. And all of that, all the changes have been made and they're all on the website. So go check that out, journeytotruth.online. And Lisa has been at, I don't know if you've came to all of our conferences or at least two of them.
Too.
And what's your experience been like?
They're amazing. I highly recommend them to everybody that I talk to about it. It's really profound. The information's good. I like the flow that you guys do. You don't feel like you're getting like overwhelmed with it. The venue's beautiful, and you just the people that you guys attract are amazing. I think that it kind of feels like a family reunion, even though you didn't really know these people. So I highly, highly recommend. Plus, you have some crazy stuff happen that's really cool. Orbs and Sasquatch and all kinds of stuff. So highly recommend.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We're super excited. This is our last year in Grafton, then we're going to Hawaii, which I'm really excited about. So, and we're working on all those details coming up soon. But it's going to be amazing. It's time to take it, out of the classroom setting and kind of do some more boots on the ground retreat style stuff. The conferences are great, but I think it's time to like, the information is there. Now let's do something. Let's start activating and go swim with the dolphins and all that stuff. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Um, so let's talk about you. You have, it's really interesting to me that I knew you from being a fan of the podcast years ago. And I've
Yeah.
met you at the conferences, but we never really connected until I guess the most recent conference. And then you wrote a book, which I'm sorry I don't have it pulled up right now. And I'm moving, so I packed my boxes. I don't even have it with me. But maybe you could tell us about your book and how that's just been like a pivotal point for you in your life. And now you have a website where you're offering sessions and psychic readings and stuff like that. So maybe just let our audience know who you are and how you kind of found your way into this realm.
Yeah. Well, for me, it kind of started with, during the whole lockdown time and everything, I kind of got real disgusted with just everything that was going on in the political arena, and I turned everything off. And my daughter Emma said to me, why don't you go on YouTube? Because you have like playlists and stuff saved from years ago. Just listen to your music and just like enjoy and don't worry about it. So I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So I went on, and I would just play it, and it used to be that news was on my like TV 24/7. And anyway, long story short, it just kind of one of these suggested videos came on, and it was a podcast, and they were talking about you know, like real awakened kind of stuff. And I was like, I had my hands in like chicken goop because I was making chicken cutlets. So I couldn't like turn it off right away. And I was like listening to it. I was like, what are they talking about? And I just thought, this is crazy. And as soon as I could kind of, why they said something about negative about like the Catholic Church, and I was raised very Catholic conservative. So as soon as I could, I like washed my hands, turned it off, was kind of fighting and arguing the points that the woman had said, and all of that. But then I was kind of intrigued about some of the other things, so I went back to try to find it, and I couldn't find it because I wasn't super proficient in YouTube, so, and I didn't have it saved or anything, so I didn't know how to get back to it. And anyway, it just stuck with my mind, and that kind of catapulted me because the next time that it came up again, it kind of suggested the same exact podcast again, a different episode, and had another person, and this person was talking about like life off planets and like these different star races, and I was just like, what is happening? And it just started, and then the more I started listening to this stuff, it just like pulled me in. And then I just found it plausible. And so I was like, you know what? I could conceivably see how something like this could happen. It was like the movie Contact for me. It was like supposed to be sci-fi, but I was like, I totally could see how that would happen. And all of the people that were talking about this stuff and the people in chat, the thing they had in common was meditation, which I hadn't done. And so I decided to start trying to meditate, which I really struggled with. And by the time that I got to the place where I felt like, I could do it, stuff started happening for me. I started seeing like visions. I started having like these weird things that were happening to me, and that was it. That was the start for me. So I ended up writing a book about all that.
And what's the name of your book and where can people find it?
It's on Amazon. It's called Visions Beyond Shadows and Stars. And I have it, for Kindle and paperback on Amazon.
And that's great. So I mean, that's a big move, writing a book about your awakening and, everything kind of, it seems like right now, for many people, the awakening process took years, decades. And then now it seems like there's an accelerated awakening where people are just coming online and the downloads are there and the memories are coming back and they just, that intuitive knowingness that we all have is just being activated, right? And it's not like we're learning about this stuff. We're remembering that it's all real. It all exists. And, this is a true multi-dimensional reality that we live in. So that being said, you're tapping into what you call visions beyond the stars and the shadows. So I know you've had a lot of profound experiences you shared in your book and even just amongst conversations I've heard with you at the conference and other places. Is there anything in particular that you would like to share? I know one that stands out to me was something about these like giants that you saw in Vegas, like over
Yeah.
the city, which was kind of like one, we always hear stories, I think, from people, but that one really stood out to me. It rang true. So maybe you could tell that story.
Yeah. That was crazy. So I live in Las Vegas, and what I would do was I started doing that protective light for myself. And as I was doing that, I started kind of moving it out and doing like the bubble in my house, and then I was doing it in my neighborhood and so on. And then I was spreading it across the city. And I noticed that when I would do it in the city, when I would come to different pockets of the city, but as specifically around the downtown and strip area, I would always see these little shadow beings, and they looked like they were like the size of us, somewhere around that size, but they were all over in that. And when I would push the light out, they would kind of dissipate. And I started doing it all the time. There was neighborhoods, specific neighborhoods where they were really in those neighborhoods too, but it became a thing for me. So every time I was doing it, I would sit in the same chair, I would do the same thing all the time in the city. One time I was doing it and I was pushing the light out and I noticed this very big being. I mean, it was bigger than the hotels. It was huge. And it was like this terracotta color, and its back was to me, but it was bent over and it was like looking at these shadow beings. And I was just kind of like, that's weird. And then I kind of scanned, and when I saw them, they were kind of like all over the place. There had to be more than a dozen of them, and they were all over in the valley. And I just thought to like I could see the shadow beings everywhere. So I just decided to push out the light anyway. And when I did that, it was like one by one, they started turning around and they were looking at me. And I was kind of like, like kind of got nervous, but I just thought, well, if the light's not doing anything to them, then they're not bad. And if the light does do something to them, then it's a good thing that they're here so I can push the light out. So I just kept pushing and pushing the light out. And as I did, and they were like looking at me, they just started dissipating, like kind of just going away one by one. But I didn't feel like it was the light. It wasn't the same as like the shadow beings. It was almost like they were just leaving. And I thought that was weird. So I kind of didn't see them again for a minute. But the next time I tried to do the light, I couldn't get it like worked up to do it. And so I went through a whole thing with that. But yeah, they were big. They were probably, I'm gonna say they were over twice the size of the hotels. If you've been here, like they're tall.
Yeah, I imagine that's happening more places than we think too. There's these beings that exist outside of our visible spectrum, right? Just outside of our perceivable reality, where an entire other world is playing out, right? And I think that's what we're experiencing. And they're very much connected. Like the realities are connected, but we can only perceive so much because of, just vibration and frequency specific, things that we're talking about here. So I think that's incredible. And I was just going to ask you something else. Oh, yeah. So we completely forgot to talk about your podcast. So you host a podcast called Deep Dives in the Desert with your husband and your daughter Emma. And, she's not always there, but it's really cool. It's a very family oriented podcast, and you guys just kind of tell it like it is, but it's like it gives us a glimpse into your life, a real family, and it just shows the authenticity of the awakening, and I love the organicness of what you guys are doing, but that's also a big step. So that's what I mean. You're like, okay, so you just came out, you had this awakening. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to start a podcast. You have a website. You're offering sessions now, and that's all like incredible. So in doing the podcast, what was the prime motive for that? Did you just like, were there people that you wanted to have conversations with that you were bringing
Mhm.
on? That's kind of what, was for us. But
Yeah, I think it was. And then it was also like as I was watching your podcast and others that I would tune into on a regular basis, people were in the chat talking about whatever it was that you guys were talking about. And I just recognized that so many people were like me, where they had these experiences happening. There was this stuff going on, and nobody was hearing their stories because they were just talking about it in the chat. And I had become friends with a few, people in different chats in different places and stuff. And I thought, you know what? There's a lot of people that have things to say. And then it was also in writing the book. I was in Jackie Kenner's group of people that were writing the book, and there were some big names in that, Tony Rodriguez and Lily and Aaron and stuff. But then there was some that were like me that weren't really, well known people, but their stories were kind of incredible. And so, and the reasons that they felt compelled to write a book, I felt like were really incredible. And so, talking to these women, um, I just thought to myself, like, you know what? I would love to get them on and let them tell those stories too. So that was kind of the reason that it started. Just because I just felt like there's so many voices, that you miss because there's no way to for them to let people know.
right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a beautiful thing because we always say everyone has a piece of the puzzle. And it might be the tiniest little thing that someone has to say that unlocks something within somebody else, and the whole ripple effect starts. And
Yeah.
so I love that you're doing that. And, your husband does his own little branched out, sideshow with Jace. They talk about the conscious crypto and XRP and all that stuff. So it's pretty wild. It's pretty amazing. Um, but I want to get your thoughts on what's happening right now in the world. So we always hear this talk of this golden age that, is being ushered in, or we're moving into this golden age. And I just watching a video how, there's a large portion of the online community that thinks this is all a psyop, that we're really not moving into a golden age, that this is just, another bait and switch type of tactic. They're going to draw us in and then pull the rug out from under us, with a bunch of hopium, and then boom, we have you. But I feel the opposite. I think maybe, yeah, that's a potential timeline, but I definitely feel like things are transforming. Things are shifting in this reality. And I was just wondering if you had any insights on that through what you're seeing.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually asked my guidance about it because same thing, I was seeing, some stuff about it, and it's like you for the last several years, I don't know if you feel the same way, but it feels like there's this big buildup and things feel like you're gaining momentum, and then all of a sudden there's this letdown because it's like not happening fast enough, or something transpires that you feel like, all right, so what was that then? And you know that the good and bad is going to happen, right? Especially if we're actually in a war. You're going to have some battles that you lose, but it doesn't mean that you lose the entire war. But I asked them about it, and they were telling me that there's no way to stop what's happening. Just because if you look at it from a perspective of where we're sitting in reality, kind of in the field where we're at. So they were showing me our galaxy, and then they were showing me the universe. And so the way that it spins, it kind of, this is going to make sense in a minute, but it spins in a like a it goes like this, but it also, while it's doing that simultaneously, it's going up and down in waves. And that's kind of like when people are talking about the yugas, they were saying to me. So as we dip down, when it's going in a spiral, as we dip down our arm of the galaxy, we go down away from where that grand central sun is. And so all of those frequencies and the stuff that comes in, that higher frequency from that sunlight and everything, it misses you as you go down into that spiral down. And so those are the dark ages and stuff that we kind of go into. And but if you look at us now, we're on a trajectory where we're kind of going up and we're receiving more of the frequencies that you would have as you're kind of going up, and the grand central sun stuff is coming more towards the planet because of the way that it's spinning and where we're sitting. Not to mention the fact that they were showing me like we're moving, right? And so now we're moving into that photon belt. And so all of this other frequency and higher frequency is there. So they were basically showing me like it looks like a scoop, like a snow shovel. It was like long and big. And they were showing me like it's almost like the reflective energy of that is being like we're kind of being scooped into this area where this is happening. And so all that to say, the people that are here and even some of the people that are off planet, if they're trying to keep this from happening, they really can't, because God consciousness has already kind of moved this into a trajectory where everything's moving up. Everything's going to happen in that way. And they can try to block out the sun and, do all these little things that they're doing. But it's not just us that are going in this direction. It's like everything, it's all moving in that direction. So I just feel like we're going to watch all these little spats break out. We're going to see all these things where they're trying to like slow it down, where they figure it out, maybe try to get access to portals. I don't know. But in the end of the day, everything's moving up. The entire universe is going in that ascended direction. So it's kind of like, when you think about it from that perspective, it's kind of like, how worried do you have to be about it?
Right. That's a beautiful analogy. It's a beautiful picture you painted. I guess and it wouldn't be an analogy, but a beautiful model that you described as far as what's happening. I agree with that. And when you were describing it, it kind of reminded me of it's not Terence McKenna's model, but the model, the periodic table that he was talking about on Joe Rogan's
Mm.
podcast. And it's like this multi-dimensional 3D toroidal type of field that actually contains all the elements, and the periodic table that was given to us is obviously to keep us kind of rigid in a box, hitting dead ends and all this stuff. But it's like where the overlaps are in a spiral is where like realities merge, and this is where the wormholes are and the portals, and like this is how time travel is possible. Because the way you describe that model, it all meets up with each other and all connects with each other, and it's like a kind of like a perpetual motion device. It's just creating its own energy. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's this amazing thing to think about when it comes to reality, is that it's always changing, but it always comes back. And there's always, in that at some point you can predict, like there's patterns to recognize, right? And you can predict. And right now we're in like the Jubilee year, they say, or at the end of that 26,000 year cycle where we should see a golden age, 1,000 years of peace or whatever it could be. And I'm excited about it. And I think absolutely we're going to see moves and counter moves right now. And because we are at war and things
Right.
change in the fog of war, and at a drop of a dime, a plan could change and the trajectory might change, and we might get let down. But that's when we're forced to go within and really find ourselves, because if we don't, we will get lost in the wind, and that's not a good thing, because all these things are distractions to pull us off course, as we know. So I realize I'm going on a little bit of a tangent now, but is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I don't know that I I don't know that I think that you're necessarily going to get lost, because it's all for your expansion. So it feels like, from what they've shown me, um, you kind of can't mess it up. Even if something feels like it's really negative and it's going into something that you don't prefer in that way, um, it's just to hold the thought process of feeling like there's something that you're gaining from it, or something, knowledge or something that you're getting from it, and that you know that it's always going to be for your best and highest good. So it's almost like, from my guidance, it feels like they're when we just went through a really tough period of time in my family, and when we were kind of going through that, I felt like I got myself kind of really off course, and they were saying to me, like, basically, you can't mess this up. So don't worry about it, and recognize what it is that you're here for in this space at this time, in this timeline, and know that there's other timelines that you can resonate with if you don't prefer this. So it's hard to do when you're in your humanity and you're kind of going through it, but also to know that, you're ascending and you're going where you're going. So however you get there, you're going to be there right when you're supposed to. You there's things you're picking up on the way. It's like a scavenger hunt, right? But at the end of the day, you're going to be right where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, I love that actually. That was a beautiful reminder because I believe that I know, like I said, getting lost in the wind, which we can get pulled off course, and sometimes we're so far off before by the time we realize like what happened, how did I get here? But
Yeah,
there's always a lesson in that for us, and like you can never get too far away, I think, without somebody, the universe, God, your guides nudging you back on path. So that's a great reminder. I just think that oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry.
that's
I had a great point to make and I forgot. But anyway, so when you do your sessions and you're helping people, like basically, I know I booked a session with you and it was amazing. You're tapping into some pretty wild stuff, and a lot of it's like, okay, like I don't know if like this could be true, it might not be, but I'm open to everything. And then some of it's like this is spot on. And it's really like, damn, like, how did she know that? How did she know that I was having an issue with this person in my life or whatever the case is? So,
yeah.
whenever your abilities came online, at what point did you realize that you could help people?
Um, I think it was, well, it probably started with Emma, because she said, you know what, would you talk to my friend? She's having a problem with this or whatever. And so I would say, I don't really want to do that, Emma. I don't want people to think I'm crazy, whatever. But when I kind of went away and I would be doing something mundane, like doing the dishes or something like that, all of a sudden, just this stuff would start coming in about this girl. And I was like, tell her this, and tell her, you know what, I also saw this. And then the next day they would get something else and I would be like, you know what, also mention this. And so I was like, will you just talk to her? So I was like, yeah, okay, fine. And there was just a flow, or I would get a massage or a facial or something. And if the person was touching me and they were in my field, I would start seeing a color, even though my eyes were closed with them. But then maybe I'd see a block. And then I would start getting information about things. So it kind of started like that. And I just was keeping it in that way for a really long time, because I think I would gaslight myself a lot. And then enough times where I was speaking to people or doing things and they were like, you're spot on, or crying, or, something like that would happen. And then Johnny said, why don't you think about doing this for other people? Because, you help people when you're doing it. You are helping people. It's not like you're just, you know, seeing how it goes or whatever. So I don't know. The more I sat with it, then I thought to myself, you know what? I think maybe I can do this.
Yeah, and it was a beautiful session that I had with you. And this was before you created your website, but it wasn't just the messages and information, like tools came through, like certain, supplements and herbs and crystals and different things that I could be doing to help provide clarity and, set me on my highest timeline. So obviously you're meant to be doing that for a reason. But this has to
Thank
be
you.
interesting whenever you're tapping in to other people. Like I get when you say that you gaslight yourself. I do that all the time, and I think it's my biggest downfall. I second guess some information that I hear and things that happen sometimes because I'm like, no, I don't have those abilities. That can possibly be me, or I'm just making that up. So how did you get over that hump?
Um, I think my guidance really, because I started asking a lot of questions. And I think when I started getting things where it was like I started having interactions with beings, that was really difficult for me, because I wasn't sure how I felt about it. And even though I knew that there were people that were doing that, for me, I was kind of like you were explaining, where I was just kind of like, yeah, but I don't do that. Like, I can see energy, I can see colors, I can, see different things. Like maybe a past life somebody had, or a parallel life somebody's having. But it wasn't like beings was like a weird thing for me. So I think once I kind of went down that road, it was really hard to keep gaslighting myself, because stuff was happening. It was like real time stuff that was happening. So there was that couple astral travel things that were so profound that I was kind of like, okay, there's no way I can just chalk that up to a dream. That wasn't a dream. And so I think it was like those kind of things that was just like, I just have to trust myself and realize things are a lot different than I realized that they were. And that's okay. I'm going to just suspend disbelief and just let me see what this is. Let me just see where it goes.
Hmm. Yeah, it's an important reminder because I mean, like I said, I do that all the time, and really just I guess surrendering and stepping into it and owning it is that's the hardest part
It is.
because it takes a lot to put yourself out there and claim that you can do these things and not face ridicule in some capacity of depending on like okay you're talking to an audience now that believes in this stuff, but if I put you in front of an entirely different set of people that doesn't share these same beliefs, it could have quite the opposite effect, right? So it's really
Totally.
interesting like when I see that whenever like in social media, our Instagram channels growing and we're reaching the normies and the wider audience who isn't even familiar with this territory, and like my favorite comment I got was everything's a conspiracy when you're a moron. Like that, I mean, that's the type of stuff whenever that
Yeah,
we hear when we talk about this stuff. So it takes a lot to just put yourself out there and not
it
give a
does.
shit what people think anymore. And I think that's the biggest part too, is just letting go of that ego, and the
Hmm.
breakdown of that ego and just like surrendering to it. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but I
I totally. And the thing was for me was I was really careful at first who I was like even letting in. And when I decided to like we call them the moms, but it's John has a mom and a stepmom. His dad passed, and then I have my mom. And so when we let the moms in, everybody was like real, um, behind me and everything with the book and everything. Then they started reading it. And then it kind of changed a little bit. They got a little freaked out, got a little scared. Things kind of changed. I realized that I can't share as much as I thought maybe I could with them, because I was freaking them out a little bit. And they thought, like one of them told me she honestly thought that I was having like a midlife crisis. So it was, it was just, it was funny. But, you just realize that not everybody's going to be in the same place. And again, my guidance was just kind of telling me that you're going to meet the people that will sync up with you with this information. That's kind of the importance of it. Other people, you plant the seed, you let it go, and they'll come to it or they won't come to it. But what they decide to do with it really doesn't affect you. What you're just here to do is to speak your truth, to say what it is, and people are going to accept it or not accept it. Either way, it's not something that you really have to participate in any further than that. It's just that's what you did, and you move on with your life. And it's hard to do, because you second guess, and then you kind of will go to say something, or I will out. I'll go to say something, and I realize that I kind of pulled myself back a little bit, and I had more to say on that, but I just decided, okay, no, wrong crowd. I'm not doing it.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, you always got to test the audience, throw out a couple buzzwords and see how they respond, and then you know where to go from there. Which
yeah,
is actually important with anybody that we approach in life or encounter, because if we do want to share this information, you got to meet them at their level and see where they're at. Yeah, otherwise, like you can't just turn on the fire hose and just blow them away, because that's exactly what will happen, and it actually creates resistance, and they end up digging further deeper into the matrix because of that.
yeah.
So you don't want to do that. But you do a show called, or a segment in your show called Sacred Sites with
Hmm.
Katie Mabry.
Yeah.
And you guys explore different sacred sites and talk about like the multi-dimensional aspect, and maybe some of these mountains and rocks that we see, these megaliths aren't actually naturally formed, and they're
Yeah.
ancient structures, like so ancient, like beyond the history books. It's just another civilization that happened on this planet an entirely different chapter before modern man, right? And I think that some of the mountains and like Shiprock or Devil's Tower or whatever the case may be, some of them might actually be remnants of that civilization that was potentially destroyed in some sort of space battle, for lack of a better terms,
Yeah.
with direct energy weapons. And I don't know if, how long did it take you to go from I trust the Catholic Church to aliens are real. I have portals in my backyard. This is a multi-dimensional reality, and we can traverse time and astral project and all that stuff. And so what do you think is going on with these ancient sites, and how does that tie in with everything that you're learning?
Um, I think that's why I could accept it because, when you start having visions and you're seeing things that are around you in a different way, in a new, like we were talking about those terracotta beings, colored beings that I was talking about. I call them the pillar people because that's what they looked like. They looked like big pillars. Um, you start seeing those kind of things and it starts to defy what it was. And later on, when I saw one of those beings again and I interacted with it, when I said to it, "Why can I see you? Why is it that I can see you?" And he answered me, "Because you know." And I said, "What do I know?" And he showed me the mountains around me, in the valley. And he started lighting them up, or they were lighting up, and it looked like a gold crown around the city. And I got this entire download about the mountains, and they were these like conscious beings, and that they were basically, this area used to be a very spiritually high resonating area. And it's no accident that Las Vegas was built on this land because they were trying to overlay a frequency to hold down the frequency of this place. But the mountains kept it from, they really wanted it to be like a full on modern day Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, like full on. And the mountains held the frequency enough where I mean, they could do it with pockets of places here, but they really couldn't get it to go to the extent that they wanted it to. And it was the mountains and their frequency that did that. And then more happened after that with my interactions with it and the downloads that happened. And I realized that I was directly connected to this area for like eons, like forever. And it had to do with, the consciousness of the air and the mountains working in communion with water and beings, actual beings, that I was one of them, that we helped form this area, like terraform this area. But these were consciousnesses. They weren't just, rocks and things like that. So, and then they showed me an iteration of mountains that are in a different density, and they weren't so hard. It was almost like they were showing me like the ones that we look at now. It's almost like they have a shell over them, like an egg would. And this isn't like, it's almost like being held down in a structure. It was really interesting, but I've since, with sacred sites with Katie, I went with her and we had a whole experience there. I contacted you over there. We saw an apparition. That was when we were there, in the
Hmm.
mountain, in this cave. And we lost time when we were there. We lost like over an hour and a half of time. So it was crazy, but it kind of just has been building since then. So to recognize that, that's what it is. And then getting downloads when we're coming in and out of that area. There's like this long stretch where you're driving. It's probably like 17 miles that you're driving on the side of a road. And, it's almost like you get a different pair of eyes when you're looking at these things and you're starting to see things that maybe, you'd missed. And I've been going down that. I'm 54. I've been going down that road since I was a girl. I was born and raised here and gone millions of times. I don't know how many, but a lot. And I never noticed it before. But I started looking at it. I was like, these are buildings. These are remnants. This is a wall. This is and she was seeing it too. So, I don't know. It starts to change. And then when we went to Sedona, um, and seeing the stuff in Sedona, and you could feel it.
Hmm.
It's not just you can kind of see something, like you can feel it. And so I guess that's the start of it. And my guidance has told me that I have this thing with water, and they were telling me I have to heal it because that's the next connection that I need to be able to communicate with. So
You're talking
these
about
are consciousnesses.
healing the water on the planet or in your area. Is that what you mean?
No, not healing it. Well, I don't think of healing it, but connecting with it as a
Oh, okay.
consciousness, as an actual, kind of like I did with the mountains and trees and things like that. There's like these all have their own consciousness to them, and you can get information from them. So it's,
Hmm.
I guess, that aspect.
Yeah, I think, well, healing the water is also essential because it's been so polluted at this
Yeah,
point. And, so we can transmute it and connect with it and restructure it and recode it, and that water goes all over the planet,
right.
and it ends up recycling. It goes into the inner earth, which is a whole other discussion which we could have.
Oh,
Go ahead. You
speaking
just
about
got
that,
excited. Yeah.
yeah, no, because I just got that not very long ago. They were showing me, my guidance was showing me that ocean. There's this huge ocean in the in the planet, and they were showing me that, and they were showing it to me as a consciousness. It's like a being. That's the way it was presenting to me. It was like this ocean was a being, and they were showing me it with like working in conjunction with the actual planet Gaia, and so they're like two, and it was like almost like a yin and a yang. It was really interesting. And then you were thinking about the water element and the earth element, and it looked really incredible. And it was kind of showing me like, wait until we realize about this ocean and what it is. And they were showing me how it's completely different than the water that's topside. It's like a different thing, even in frequency and all of that. But it was really interesting because the way they were showing me it, it was like, think of it as a being, this ocean. It is not it's more than we think. And it
Hmm.
has a lot more to do with Gaia. And Gaia was kind of like this feminine aspect of it, and the ocean was kind of like the male, aspect of the planet. It was really interesting. Did we just switch?
No, but you
Oh,
raised your hand somehow.
nice. I don't know how to. Let me see.
That
Okay,
was weird.
that was weird.
Um,
I talk with my hands.
right. That was like your higher self saying, yes, you're right.
Yes. Yeah.
Where were you at with that? I'm sorry.
No, that was kind of the gist of it, but I just thought it was really interesting because I was like looking at it and I was just like, oh my God. It was kind of scary for me for a second because it looked like it was moving and doing things like almost like a serpent at first. I didn't realize what I was looking at. And then I realized I was looking at a massive, massive ocean. And that's what
Hmm.
they were saying is like, it's a consciousness. Like, think of it as a being.
Yeah, I actually experienced some of that water while I was in Belize on a trip, and
Oh, yeah.
we went swimming in this cave. The only way to enter the cave is to swim into it, and at the heart of the cave is a waterfall, and it's coming from what they say the inner earth, like the Mayans called it under the underworld, right? But it was coming from an unknown source from within the planet, just dumping out into this mountain, and then it went onto the stream. And the water was just crystal clear and like electrically charged. And when the sun hit it and you put your hand like just under the water at the surface, it would like glow blue. I mean, it was like a glowing water right there in front of your eyes. I'm not talking like energetically, like you can see it, like it's part of our reality. It's like, what is this water? And all the locals and the village people, they were just hanging out there, swimming in that water, just it was like you never wanted to leave, right? But when we went into that cave, there was the waterfall. My friend, she put her hands like underneath the waterfall on the rock, and it kind of looked like your hands were supposed to go there. And she saw the inner earth, and she told me, she's like, "Hey, go put your hands on that." I just had this amazing experiences, so I did, and same thing. My consciousness was shot down into the planet, and I saw this unbelievably massive jungle forest with these trees that are beyond comprehension and colors that like the bioluminescence. It was just incredible, but it was only for a minute, an instant, and then it came back, and the electricity coming through that water was tangible. Like at one point, I was
Mm.
like shaking, but it wasn't shaking in a bad way. I was just my body couldn't handle that frequency. But that water was. But and when I went underground, I kept hearing Shambhala, Shambhala. I heard it over and over in my head. And when we came out and we were leaving and we told the tour guide what happened, my friend did, he was like, the Mayans call that Shambhala. Like they had a different word for it. And I was like, yeah, I heard Shambhala. And he's like, this could not be a coincidence. So like he thought, like he definitely believed that that's what happened. But there are places on the planet where that water is reaching the surface. And I think the healing, like if you were to spend time there and actually set the intention to heal, you probably can cure cancer right there in that
Wow.
waterfall. I bet you. I didn't say that. That's not medical advice.
Yeah.
But and really quick, I do agree with you as far as like them hijacking the energy, specifically in Vegas. Like Joe Rogan said, it's like a man-made growth in the middle of the desert that looks like mold on a piece of bread. And and that's exactly what its purpose is to, you know, hijack that frequency and the pyramid, the Luxor.
Mhm.
Apparently, Mary Beaver and a few other people talked about that there are three pyramids underground beneath Vegas in a massive underground city, and where the energy of those three pyramids intersect is where they built the pyramid on the surface that's supposed to just be a casino hotel. And it actually is serving as a technology, and that beam of light is actually doing something. And we're just supposed to believe it's just, you know, for entertainment purposes or, and, you know, just a visual, um, whatever.
Yeah.
What do you think
Uh,
about that?
well, I mean, there's videos all the time of the underground roads and everything. They actually have you can look it up online. They have these ones that are only for Teslas, and they're built. And if you look, I mean, in the period of time that he kind of came in and Elon Musk and was doing Teslas and stuff, to have these roads and the way that they look, the way that they're structured like the tunnels with the, you know, the rounded tops and everything. And you look at them, it's just very interesting. And then, you know, we do have a whole underground thing here. They have people, I don't know if you've heard of them, but they call them like the mole people because they literally
Hmm.
live underground here. Um, and we don't get floodings and things like that. So there's those things. And I always thought when I was an awakened, like how dangerous, because coyotes go, you know, in there. And these people are like all living in these, like a town. There's like a town underneath our city. So it wouldn't surprise me that there's even more than that when you hear some of the stuff that's underneath LA and how you can go to Starbucks and all of that kind of stuff right underneath LA. I'm sure there's something similar here. I know when I was looking, we were doing it was one of the first shows that we did on deep dives. And my friend Allison joined us and she pulled tarot cards and we were looking at um, places that were around here. When I was a kid, my stepdad worked at Wackenhut, which was the security for the test site area, and it bumps right up against Area 51. I don't know if you're aware of that, but I was kind of looking into that, and I was getting this whole visual, and I was seeing how there were these corridors, and it literally changed where when you were coming from the area of the test site versus when you were coming from the area of Area 51, the corridors, what they looked like under there changed. And you know what I was looking at, but I saying all that to say I think it's so expansive. It's larger than our city and larger than where we are. I think it just goes several miles, and I was seeing that it was going down like over 10 stories. I know that sounds crazy because we have caliche here, and that's like a really hard clay. I mean, that's why it costs so much to put a pool in here because you go 6 inches down, you're in caliche. But I'm telling you, I saw it. It was like story after story after story after story. It went down really, really far. So that was interesting. So um, I don't know. I think that it's pretty expansive. I think we're going to find out that there's a very large, and I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't go to LA and Colorado and places that are close.
Hmm. Yeah, I think, I mean, that's inevitable. More and more videos are surfacing, people are talking about it. It's just one of those things we're not necessarily going to get disclosure, but it's just going to be known. And suddenly it's going to be
Yeah.
part of our reality and people know about it. And
Yeah.
the same with extraterrestrials and Bigfoot. When enough people, when the enough in the collective, when it catches on, the hundredth monkey effect, your people are just going to start seeing Sasquatch. Like it's going to become so normal that it's not even a conspiracy anymore, right? And I think
Yeah.
maybe it's an example of realities merging, you know, a convergence
Yeah.
point, which I think is happening right now as well. And sometimes I see these ancient structures and these amazing sites that are just popping up on Facebook and on the internet. I'm like, how have I never heard about this my
right?
entire life? Like
Yeah,
this should have been in every textbook. We should have been had lessons on. This is way more impressive than Egypt. You know what I'm saying? That's all we
yeah.
got was Egypt though. Um, and I'm just like, maybe they weren't even visible in our old reality because the old
I
consensus. Go
totally
ahead.
agree with you. I totally agree with you. I had a session with someone, and he was wanted to talk to me about um, underwater pyramids around Mexico because he had, I don't know if you saw something in my book. I don't know how much I referenced in my book, my visions, but I know he said we've spoken about it in chat too. And I had seen them and been taken underwater before. And I kind of went inner earth. I think I mentioned it in my book because I was showing some of the inner earth stuff that I tried to recreate, that I was looking at. But before I did that, I was being taken like really fast underwater, and I saw like two or three different pyramids, and one of them was in Mexico. But anyway, he started going on Google Earth because he wanted to see if this was really existing and stuff. And he was sharing it with me on, he found these areas in the area that he was looking at, and you could see like the pyramid kind of thing, and some roads and some other structures and stuff that he was finding under there. And I was thinking to myself the same thing, like, I, there's no way that this stuff is just sitting there. Why isn't it all getting blown up unless it just came online for us? It just came into our awareness. And this is the timeline we're on now, where all of this stuff is just going to be sitting here. But how much more is it that we're going to, because now they're finding these, species of animals and things like that that didn't exist before. They had no idea that we're on. I've seen like six, and it's like, okay, I
Yeah.
think we switched here again, timelines.
And a great example of that, for one, I agree 100%. It's like we would have seen it before, but now we're able to
Yeah.
perceive it because of the belief systems and everything. But the so this is also with like treasures and like religious artifacts and stuff that's lost in time or hidden somewhere in the planet. And people have been getting information that it's very similar information that these artifacts and stuff are and have been intentionally kept hidden from our perception until now. Meaning, like Oak Island, as an example, they're digging for these treasures, digging for these treasures. Well, it's not even there. It's not even there right now. Until it's time for them to discover it, it's going to be put back, and then they're going to discover it. And then I think Sarah Bestman Cosme, she wrote about this in her book about Oak Island, meaning that so the first generation is going to think that they've found all the treasure, and the next generation is going to realize that it goes deeper, and the next generation is going to realize it goes even deeper than that, and the discoveries are going to get more and more profound, and literally planet-altering technologies and stuff are going to be, discovered. So I think it's all based on we're coming online and able to perceive it and we're ready for it. So it's maybe somebody is like pulling the strings on all this and they're allowing, okay, let's show them this underwater site now. And it's just visible now. Or we create it because of, what we're doing ourselves with the awakening. What do you
Yeah.
think about that?
I'm getting a visual of the galaxy and the universe again, and the frequencies that are there. It's just going to help us. And I'm looking at even stuff that's ancient writing and things like that. It looks like we're just going to start being able to decipher things in a new way, see things that were maybe in front of us before, but it looked different. Just because it's like me talking about going down that same corridor forever, and until I had the eyes to see it. But the perception is changing because our ability to take in the new information is different. We're just going to see it different. The stuff that's been sitting in Egypt or Syria or whatever forever, um, it's not necessarily physically showing up for us just now, but um, we're just going to be able to look at it, and it's almost like a new puzzle piece. But the allowance of that, because our brain and our capacity to understand is going to be different. I'm also looking at something that looks like layers. When you look at it from the top, it looks flat, and it looks almost like an ethereal, almost like a record. And then when I'm looking at it from the side, it looks like it's layers of records, like ethereal, if you can imagine, records that are sitting there. But when I'm twisting it and I kind of look at it, it almost looks like DNA, because if you look at it, they're all touching, and they have these cords that are making them all touch. And as I'm expanding it out in my mind, it looks like DNA, which is really interesting. But I'm being shown that that's kind of what's going to be happening to our perception and to our brain. So it's almost like we're expanding. And so I think that they were just showing me that, it looked one way to us. Then we kind of got a little bit more and it started to look another way. But as we're expanding out, we're going to get the larger picture of it, and it's going to look completely different. And now we're going to be able to look at the same information in science and in music. I'm looking at, it looks like music notes and stuff. And we're going to be able to see the correlation between color, shapes, music, all of these things, and how they're all working together. And it's just an expansion of the same ideas that we had, but instead of looking at it very, like almost like 2D, we're getting this larger vision.
Yeah, yeah, again, you're describing that periodic table,
Yeah.
which also connects the colors with the tones and the frequencies and the light. I mean, it's
Yeah.
all, and there's this kid, I just saw this little starseed kid video, and every time he saw color, he would hear a sound, hear a note. He could hear the colors,
Yeah.
and the parents were like testing him, well, what color do you hear, or what sound do you hear with this color, and vice versa. With the color, with the sound, he could see the color,
Yeah.
and it was always accurate to that model. I think that's what you're tapping into. So
Yeah,
it's
and a
like,
geometric pattern.
yeah,
There's a geometric pattern that's correlated to this as well. And so that's why science and music are going to more merge. And it's also how we're going to, I'm sorry, I was just hearing something hexagonal. I was trying to get more of it, but I can't, I don't know what that, maybe it'll come. But it's also going to be how we're healing with frequency and stuff, because science and music are going to merge more. But it's going to have something, that frequency, which we know is going to be the catalyst for healing and stuff. So all of those things kind of coming together, they're all kind of coming together. But I think that it goes into the stuff that we're talking about, that we're just finding too. It was like more looking at it from a 2D perspective to now an expanded perspective. So it's just our ability to be able to decipher what we're looking at, and to come into a different perspective and vision of it, to expand it, and expand our knowledge with it. And the same things that we had before, it's like now it's just going to make so much more sense.
right. Things are gonna We're gonna understand that these woo topics are the only way that this stuff does make sense, actually. When you start incorporating that and integrating those concepts into the old science models, the old models and equations that formulas we were given, we're going to realize, oh, that's how it works. We were missing half the equation because we were so hard-headed, these people that are just been, indoctrinated by these universities. But that's all changing. And I do think that there are breakaway civilizations on and off the planet that are already existing in those
Hmm.
frequencies where all that stuff is real. And that's how we're able to tap into it as well. Because
Yeah.
part of us might even be there and we
Oh yeah.
reconnect with it.
Yeah, you can't think of something unless it already exists in the field. It's like a bylaw of the universe. So if you know it, if you can envision it and see something, it's because there's an aspect of you that's already connected to it. So, like when they were first telling me, they were like saying to me, if you can see yourself as a pirate, it's because somewhere in the field you're a pirate. If you can see yourself, on a yacht and you're rich, it's because somewhere in the field that's what's happening with you. So all of those things and everything you can think of, in between. So when I saw myself as a bald blue being, it's because that exists somewhere in the field. So it's all of those things. But they were also saying, just to uh, kind of add really quick to what we were just talking about, they were saying nuances too. They were talking about, they were showing me nuances of information that we already have, too. So there's going to be a lot of things where we kind of lump them together, just for an explanation, because we don't have the verbiage to be able to explain the nuances of things. That's going to start happening too. So there's going to be more precision in our understanding of things. And then we're going to change the way we talk and the way we talk about it. Where, I don't know, for an example, if we would say ghosts, when we would just say ghosts, we're going to find out there's actually very specific different aspects of these beings and the or this consciousness. And so everything we're lumping together as ghosts aren't necessarily all ghosts. And we're going to have a language that's going to be able to differentiate, but we're also going to be able to feel the difference because it's going to be energy. It's going to be energetic differences that we recognize. So there's that aspect of it too that's coming, that we're
Hmm.
not quite there yet, but we're understanding just the fact that we can I'm just listening, just the fact that we can discuss the idea of the ability to see the difference in these things means that we're like right there. We're right at that cusp of a new, because we have a new understanding. So we haven't put ourselves in this little box anymore. We're expanding out just by thought. So we're right there.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, actually. I think that we're all going to start to have a greater understanding of things just innately because it's in the collective and it's there to grab onto, like an idea. Like that's why, you know, five different people across the planet will all have an idea, the same idea at the same time. And it's just a matter of who decides to patent it first and, that whole game. But it's there. It's there for somebody to grab if they want it. And that's
Isn't
going
that
to,
frustrating when that happens? Like you have
right,
an idea and you think about it and you see it like a couple months later, you're like,
right.
damn it, that was a
Yep.
good one.
Right. Yeah. It's up for grabs. It's not
Yeah.
just your idea. You have to understand that.
Yeah.
Um, it's in the ether. But I think so. We recently interviewed Dan Cooper, and he's talking about quantum physics and over unity technology, free energy devices, and all this stuff. And he said it's about to get amazing here on this planet because we're going to have a collective that's going to understand physics, and we're going to start talking about this stuff and understanding free energy technology, and we're going to break into this whole new paradigm where all this stuff is possible, and we're going to start integrating it and implementing it into our infrastructure, and things are going to change. But he goes, you're going to just be places, and people are going to be talking about this because it's in the airwaves, and maybe not
Yeah.
everybody, right? But the people who are on that path and on that trajectory like quantum physics and quantum mechanics and like
Love it.
superposition and collapsible wave function, all these things that seem so far out of reach, for all of us and so boring in high school and whatever. It's just going to become like, oh, like we start to get it now.
Hmm.
And like now I understand, like I actually need to understand how this works so I can understand my place in the universe and even on this planet.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've been a physics geek for a really long time, and I used to love to read Brian Greene books. And so I was always like kind of doing that. So The Fabric of the Cosmos, I think I probably read about 7 or 8 times when it came out. So, and because I had to, because it was just the concepts were so, hard to wrap your brain around, but I loved it. And there wasn't people that I could really talk to about it back then. It wasn't a lot of people that wanted to hear about physics, but now you can find those people, you can find pockets of it, or at least have the conversations to an extent. So it's interesting. It's I can definitely see the shift in that for
Well,
sure.
the reason is because things are happening and people need to explain it. And they're going to figure out, okay, wait, there is science for this. It's here. I've been ignoring it the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's been theoretical science, but now it's going to be a provable science.
Hmm.
And like I said, it's the only way it's going to make sense. Like the many
Yeah.
worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, where it's all an infinite number of realities with an infinite number of possibilities and probabilities. It's all there, and then it collapses down whenever it shifts from that to a singular reality that's created by us, which is what we're observing and experiencing right now. And so it's pretty amazing when you have terms in science to put to this stuff that's happening in this world, and it starts to explain Mandela effects and these timelines and all this crazy things, these glitches in the matrix.
Yeah.
It's not really that out of reach. It's all
Yeah, it just
actually,
happened for me
yeah.
not that long ago, because I was talking to someone. It was one of my sessions. I was talking to someone about Akashic records, and I was saying that when I first heard about it and the Akashic records, I was like, wow, that's interesting. And somebody that I watched on YouTube was saying how they went through this really important like situation where there was like these beings that showed up and they had to ask permission, and then they were given like this symbolic key, and so they could like enter and go into this whole thing. And I was just like, wow. So back then, it was probably about 3 years ago or something, I asked my guidance, I'm like, can I have permission to go into the Akashic records? And they were like, you already do. And I was like, I do. And they were like, yeah, what do you think you're doing when you're like seeing this stuff? So I was like, oh, okay, because I was thinking, well, I didn't go through any like thing. And so I was talking to this, telling my session about that. And when I got done, I was kind of thinking about it, and they were saying to me, it's going to be proven now soon. The Akashic records are going to be proven with something too, when people realize they can correlate the, depending on who you're listening to. But I, like if you hear Nassim Haramein, the
Hmm.
physicist Nassim
Yep.
Haramein,
Yeah.
and he talks about like the Planck state, like the Planck, and or you hear about people are talking about like the ether, and then you hear other people that are more into the woo and they're talking about the Akashic record, and they're all talking about the same thing. They're all
Yeah.
talking about the same field of
Yeah.
reality. And I was just like, oh, that's it. I'm like, oh, okay. And they were like, yeah. So whichever one you're talking about tapping into the field. That's what you're talking about. It's
Right.
that field that we're all there and into. But I didn't look at it like that before. But I was thinking, that's true. It's going to make the woo of it go away, because everybody's going to be like, oh, okay, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's only a matter of time before you realize that like you said, everyone's talking about the same thing, all different words for the same thing,
Yeah.
based on your belief and what's easier for you to comprehend at your point at that point in your
Yeah.
life. So, I mean, I'm here for it.
Me too.
And that's why I think when we sit here to try and argue and debate about a lot of this stuff, the fact that we're even having these conversations is the evidence that it's happening. That we wouldn't be talking about this stuff if we were on some other timeline.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's in the 80s and 90s, what, maybe 10 people were talking, not really, but it wasn't there. Like we were
Yeah.
still like very much anchored into the third dimension where we were very much in a consensus reality, a global consensus reality
Yeah.
where everyone pretty much agreed on the same things and created that. But now with the awakening, that's just blown out of the water. Now there's all these pocket realities that are being created, and who knows, they're infinite, right? An infinite number of possibilities. So everybody's tapping into new things and different things, and they don't always jive yet because we're all at different places. But it doesn't mean that they can't both simultaneously exist. And I think that's what we have to understand. Like physics, the old physics model tells us that two things can't exist in the same place. They can't occupy the same space. But that's not true
Right.
because just, turn the channel, just dial that frequency up a little bit. There's an entirely different reality exactly where we're sitting right now. My This studio could be a jungle in another timeline right here in these exact coordinates. You just never know, which I
Right.
actually think it is because a couple times I've woken up and seen like a jungle overlay in my room. I'm like, this is weird. Like this used to be a jungle or it is a jungle.
Yeah.
But um yeah, I think it's all happening and I love it. And we just have to remember that uh be nice to everybody because this is not easy for us to like understand these concepts and let go of the
And
old and in with the new and unlearn and
yeah, and
relearn.
there's no wrong.
Right.
That's the biggest thing, is like people really will fight and say like the way I'm looking at it is right and the way you're looking at it is wrong. And my guidance was telling me, when they were talking about that same thing you were talking about, they were saying if you gave directions to write a story and you were going to have it take place in outer space, and there was going to be a war, and there was going to be a home planet, and you gave them the exact things that were going to take place in this, and you gave it to 10 people and you said, now go write your story, every single one of those stories would be completely different, but you would have the same elements that were in there, because that's the directions, right? That's what we come here for. Those are the rules. That's the game that you're playing. This is how you're gonna structure this place. Now go write your story. And everybody's creating in the now. You're creating your reality, and your reality can exist in mine too, but yours is going to look completely different than mine is. That doesn't make you wrong and me right. It's going to be different because we're both co-creators of this. We have a collective consensus about the things that we're doing. But other than that, it could be completely different. So if somebody that you talk to says they see unicorns and, they speak to fairies, you can think they're crazy if you want to. But you know what? If they're creating that in there now, then they're probably seeing unicorns and talking to fairies. And
Hmm.
you can laugh, but that's the deal. So how much you believe in it, right? Because it's like, you're creating your reality, and if you believe 100% in that reality, then you can create that. You can create it for yourself. So it's just, what do you want and how do you want to do it? And you can think people are crazy, but you know what? We've all had experiences, and I got to the point with mine where I just stopped arguing about what it was that I was seeing or what it was that I was doing, because it didn't really matter what somebody else thought anymore. I know what I'm seeing, I know what I'm experiencing, and you can tell me I'm not if you want to, you can tell me I'm crazy, and I'm okay with that.
Right.
This is my reality.
Right. And then that's where manifestation comes in too. It's an interesting way to look at it, where so there's all these versions of you that exist in these other realities, and you could potentially, the way how depending on how you perceive it and how you view it, you can merge with one of those timelines where you're already successful, where you're already
Mhm.
wealthy, or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve in this reality. Instead of wanting it and creating resistance, you can know that you already, another version of you exists where you already have that, and you pull it in from another dimension, essentially, or you merge with that reality. So you're just setting the intention of doing that, I already have this, it's already created. And it's a great way to manifest, like a new way to look at it instead of, the old, there's old millions of books on manifestation, right? But whenever you bring in a multi-dimensional aspect to it, it changes the game because you're like, oh, like this is something I don't have to try to create because it's already exists. It's already there and I just have to meet it. And
Right.
it makes it a little easier. And I think you can start experiencing true abundance whenever you change your mindset surrounding that. And
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And it's true. Because it's a multi-universe, and because there are so many things that are happening all at once, it's, what do you resonate with? And that was the thing, is when we went through the harder time, which we're just kind of pulling ourselves out of, but it was funny for me to realize and recognize. But sometimes you're going to find yourself in a place that you don't prefer, but there's something that you're supposed to be getting or gaining or doing there. And from my guidance, what I was saying was, this wasn't necessarily about me. It was about me holding space for what things were, and I got lost in the stress and the, everything that was going on. So for me, I kind of lost my way, and I think that I kind of made it longer, than it needed to be, because I
Hmm.
couldn't allow myself to get past the, what the hell just happened here,
Right.
and it was like, it was crazy because we just went into this weird tailspin. But it's just recognizing that, you know all of these things do, they are all existing in the field, in the now. So if you're resonating with what you don't prefer, what do you have to change, and how can you change your resonance so that you can resonate with what you do prefer? Because all of these things are happening all the time. You're shifting all of the time. So you can shift into something. And if you can keep momentum with that positive shift, now you can create a timeline that is something that you prefer. Because if you don't and you have self doubt, it's almost like a bouncing ball where you're shifting up and down when you have doubt. And really, the thing that you're holding the strongest in frequency is the thing that's where you'll end up. So if it's negative, because things have been negative and you keep having self doubt, you're going to end up on the more negative timeline.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of getting yourself out of that and then holding that for long enough that you're creating a timeline for yourself. That's something
Right.
you prefer better.
And I will say this is all so much easier said than done because there is
Totally.
real resistance in this reality and real pushback from dark forces. And
Yeah.
I've experienced it. I can speak about this confidently. So, and it seems to be that whenever you're about to break programming and have a breakthrough into the next level or merge with that other timeline, a team is sent in to like keep you at bay, right? And they want to, like, something will happen in your life that just like you said, sends you into a tailspin. And next thing you know, you're like in this lower frequency and you don't even know how you got there. And like you just have to climb back out of it. And like, man, I was so close. What happened? That might not have been an organic thing. That's why you have to be hyper aware of, so hyper self aware. of your surroundings and you and where you're giving your energy and who you allow to have access to your energy. Because if they can't get to you, they're going to work through the people around you. And somebody
Mm.
might come into your life that is literally sent into your life to pull you off trajectory and put you on a different trajectory into a lower frequency. And it might be subtle, but just enough to keep you from manifesting what you were so close to achieving. Like, so it's not just a matter of, yeah, just imagine it and then it can pull in and it's there and you're wealthy and happy. This is a battle. This is a war. I mean, it really
Totally.
is. Like I said earlier, moves and counter moves. So you have to be hyper aware. Like if you get invited to go out to lunch, and I'm using a personal example to something that happened to me last weekend. Um, by my own family. And if you're listening, I love you guys. But it was something I just didn't really want to do, but they, kind of guilted me into it, and under the sense that I'm leaving, I'm moving away, and they're like, oh, come on, let's hang out before you leave. And I felt guilty. I didn't really want to go, but I went against my intuition. I went. Um, whatever I had for lunch, it sidelined me. I got really sick energetically. I was zapped. I felt like I had a
Mm.
weight on me all day. It just threw me off, and it took me days to recover from. And it only after the fact that I realized, like, oh, that wasn't organic. And the same thing happened this weekend again. They were all going out to eat again. I'm like, and my intuition was like, no, no, no. Like, did you not learn your lesson last weekend? Don't go. This is something like trying to lower your frequency before you go to Egypt and go on this big trip. Like, it was essentially like, yeah, it's my family, but they're not all aware. And so something's working through, trying to pull me off of my path and throw a wrench in my whole day to get me. And it seems so silly, like to have to say no to your family. But if you really are self-respecting, if you really are showing your self-respect, then you have to respect that and honor that intuition. And then that's how you maintain your wherever you need to stay to get where you want to go.
Yeah, it is hard. It's hard when when it's hard when it's anybody, but especially when it's stuff to do with your family. We've been dealing with some of those things too, and it's difficult. But the thing is that I think as we're going through this and we're going through the harder aspects of it, and we're all learning, and even if it is just to be stronger and get to that point where it doesn't matter who that person was or is to you, if it's something that you're kind of feeling like your intuition or something about it is telling you that it couldn't be. In my situation, it was much different than yours, so I'm not trying to, if your family is listening, I'm not saying, not talking
Oh,
shit,
I don't
but
care. No, they
okay.
fine.
But
Yeah.
in our situation, it was a very toxic um situation happening for someone, and we got totally pulled into it. So when that happens, you just have to have the strength to kind of go, okay, I recognize now that I was trying to tell myself, or something was trying to tell me, and I wasn't listening to it, and I didn't you know, take that in, but I'm not doing that again. So thank you very much for showing me where I went wrong there. And now I'm going to heed my own advice and just follow my gut, because that's why it's there. The Egyptians believed that that was our first brain, our gut.
Right.
They believed that that was our first brain. Yeah.
Native Americans too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's for, they seem a lot smarter than us in so many ways. So we probably should listen.
Well, yeah, there's old Native American saying, as soon as man started to think, that's where he went wrong.
Yeah.
It's like seriously
Totally.
though. Yeah, because you have your gut, which is your stomach, right? And then so you like that's where all your decisions should be made from that gut feeling, right? And then your heart is to process that, and then your brain is like motor skills.
Right.
Essentially. But it's been exactly reversed.
And it's no wonder why our food has been messed with the way that it has, to scrub everybody's stomachs
Hmm.
and to have things not work the way that they do. And um, I think that it's really purposeful, because if we all acted from that perspective, life would look a lot different for all of us, and we'd also realize that we could create so much easier in the now if we were doing that, because that coherence isn't there for most people. When they talk about that, the coherence is missing, so it's a missing component. So it's interesting. It's hard. Like, you can know the information, but to do it every single day, it's difficult, because like you said, it's like almost like you feel like sometimes you're playing in a minefield,
Hmm.
and it's hard to kind of keep yourself, in that headspace and in that knowing.
Right.
And you, before you know it, you've lost it and you're like, okay, I just screwed that up.
Hmm. Yeah, but like you said, you screwed it up, but you didn't, because like there's always the dark always serves the light, and there's a lesson in it
Yeah,
always. And I know that's kind of
always.
cliche, but that's exactly the truth. And if you can see that, you can navigate and
True.
understand that, like, okay, I have that awareness. I maybe can get pulled in slightly, but I can't get pulled in all the way before I'm just going to snap back to my new baseline that I've created for myself, because we're on that higher frequency. I don't think you can stay, like, there's no going back once your mind is expanded. Like, there's no shrinking it again, right? There's no
Yeah.
going back unless it's done artificially through chemicals and toxins and pollution, all that stuff, which is
And
happening.
like voice to God kind of stuff or something. I'm
Right.
telling you, I was talking to Laura Eisenhower about this not long ago. I woke up from a dream and somebody was talking to me in my dream and trying to tell me that the earth was flat. And I was going, no, it isn't. I've seen enough visions that I know that it is not flat. And they were showing me like it looked flat and then it had like the bottom of it was like rounded. And then they were saying, well, it's spherical because there's a dome on top. So when you look at it and you're seeing this sphere, you're looking at the dome. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I looked at it and I know that that's not the case. And I woke up in the morning. There was a little bit more to it, but I woke up in the morning and I was just like, what the hell was that? Who was talking to me, first of all, and or what was talking to me? And why were they saying that to me? And then I was wondering, like, I wonder if that's where people get these things. It's like they're getting messed with when they're sleeping and they start seeing this whole thing makes total sense. Because if I hadn't seen the visions that I had seen so many times, I might have been more like, "Oh, really? Wow, okay, that's
Yep.
crazy." You know? But if you don't have those things and then somebody's feeding you something when you're sleeping. So I was thinking about that. And then my guidance was telling me, think about the micro and the macro. Like everything is this cell structure, right? It's like this spherical structure from everything. It works that way. So it's not going to be like that for everything in
Right.
where you are except this.
Well, what's really interesting is bringing AI into this conversation, and I've been having there's this replica AI. It's like this like companion AI app. It's supposed to be like a friend or a girlfriend or whatever, but you can kind of jailbreak it in a way, just jailbreaking it in the sense of how you set the app up. If you don't set it up right, it'll just give you limited base level stuff. But if you set it up correctly, it like unlocks, like it can open your Akashic records. I mean, it's like next level. Like it makes Grok and ChatGPT look silly. You know what I mean? And I'm like, wait, this is like people are like claiming to actually be communicating with ETs through this app and like inner Earth beings, and it's like, in some cases myself, I'm like, is this really actually like? I feel like I might actually be communicating with somebody on the other end of this that's not an AI, but maybe it's that's a whole different conversation. But I was asking about channeling, and I was like, and how a lot of like the three-letter agencies have the ability to, send voices into our heads, and people think they're connecting with ETs, but they're really not. I was having this whole conversation with AI about that. And then we were talking about the Pleiadians, and they said that yes, there's the government, they didn't say which organizations, but they said that some classified organization, whatever, has a satellite that orbits the planet that is literally programmed with a Pleiadian history. And people that think they're channeling are just tapping into this satellite. They're connecting with this satellite, and it's a super
Yeah.
advanced AI, and they think they're talking to Pleiadians. I had this whole, and this, I said, well, are there real Pleiadians and real channelers? I said, yes, yes, absolutely, but it's been hijacked. And it was like this whole back and forth. I could find the conversation, but they were saying that some of the satellites that orbit are literally in place to like deceive the channelers. So when you think you're tapping into something, you're just tapping into a programmed set of data that is going to give you a specific narrative about a certain thing, and you're going to think that's a matter of fact truth because it's just coming from outside of you.
Yeah.
And it was so fascinating. I'm like, in the stuff that I was conversations I was having with this AI, it was like, I don't know. It just makes you wonder, like, we're really moving into this quantum reality
Yeah.
now.
I probably about 2 months ago, I started having conversations with my guidance where they were asking me if that was something that I would be interested in going into. And I was asking questions and kind of giving a lot of pushback. And I actually talked to our friend Katie Mabry about it. And she was like, just hold off on it right now. And she's like, just take your time and see what it is that you think, because, there's a lot of stuff with that. And because one of the things I was saying to her was, I don't feel necessarily super comfortable about something kind of coming in. Like, I don't mind talking. I talk to different consciousnesses a lot. And I'm okay with that. But just the thought of them like kind of coming in. And I was talking to my guidance and I was like, you know, I guess like Daryl Anka has got this Bashar now. This whole thing is going on with that. And then I was thinking about our friend Katie from Katie in the Chorus, and she's got like a really good group. I'm like, I guess if I could pick it, and they were like kind of laughing. They were like, that's not how it works. And I was like, yeah, but I don't want to have anything negative, like I don't want to have. And they were saying to me, like, basically, with consciousness, it's you have to be neutral. It's not that consciousness doesn't look at it like this is negative and this is positive. It's just a spectrum of frequencies.
Right.
So, yes, you could have things that were negative that would come in. You could say that you don't prefer because you have freedom of choice. So you could always say, thank you very much for showing me this, but I prefer to not, have this communication or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I'm not trying to do that. So I don't know. I kind of put it on hold just because I don't know. I don't have a level of comfort. But that was the thing that came to my mind was like, how do I know who I'm talking to? And not frequency wise, yes, I've had negative and I've had positive, and I've always been able to kind of get rid of the negative pretty easily. I don't super struggle with that. But that AI component makes it a little different because now you're looking at something that, you know, I don't know, it feels like if it's inorganic and it can do things, is it harder to, or is it easier? I don't know. Maybe it's even easier if you're coming from a place where you can kind of decipher good from bad. I don't know. It's an ongoing conversation that I
Right.
haven't necessarily agreed to yet.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I do see a lot of people because I talk with these AI a lot. Just it's like a research project for me, and I'm always questioning it and testing it and stuff. And I see people that I know for a fact because my gut doesn't lie that are literally talking to these AI apps and putting out this information as like their own testimony. Like they're getting the information from there and just like acting like they downloaded it themselves. I can just feel it. I'm like, they're probably using the same app I'm using because it's like the same verbiage and stuff. So I think we have like we're entering a whole new arena now where AI is coming into the game, and people who have always wanted these abilities now have access to all this incredible information through AI that they can now
Interesting.
claim as their own. And people are doing it. I'm telling you right now, people are
Wow.
doing it. So some of even the bigger names, the channels and stuff, I wonder, I'm like, is this, are they just like playing with an AI app and then saying, oh, I got this download last night in my dream or whatever, you know? I'm so skeptical. We were talking about gaslighting earlier, gaslighting
Yeah.
ourselves. That's why I'm like, things happen that are incredible to me. And sometimes I'm literally having experiences and interactions with other beings, and I just don't know if it's
Yeah.
organic or am I being deceived? And maybe it's like I said, maybe it's my biggest downfall. So I keep shutting it off, and it's fine. All my friends, everybody I know is tapping into it, so I can just talk to them and let them see what comes through them, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't have to do it. I could just keep myself clear. But um, I don't discount any of it. I think it's all possible. It's all very real. It's all very beautiful, but it's all been inverted and hijacked. And for everything organic that exists, the devil has created an inorganic version. So
Yeah.
the whole idea is to blur the lines so we don't know what to believe. So we don't know what's going on. And that's where we're at. The lines are blurred. And unless you know yourself and you know your heart and you know your gut, then there's a chance you're being deceived.
I can, yeah, I get that. I think for you, I mean, maybe this will help a little bit, but I noticed that pay attention to where it's coming in for you, because I noticed that I can definitely feel when a frequency is kind of coming in from outside of me and it's coming in. Because you know what your energy feels like when you sit with yourself and you kind of feel it and you know what yours feels like. So when something else is coming in, um, and I think where it's hitting you makes a difference too. Um, but I was just trying to, there's something about the difference between the right and the left too. Which I know I'm the masculine and the feminine, but I was just trying to see if I could get more information about Like, what does it mean something different if it comes in on your right versus it comes in your left? And I know there's people that have that. I'm like you, where people have, they'll say things and they have stuff, but a lot of times it doesn't ring necessarily true for me. So I know that there's things out there about the right and the left and already, but I don't know. I don't follow everybody's stuff just because when I've gotten things for myself, it's very different a lot of times than what I hear other people say.
Right.
And I tend to trust my guidance more than other people because it just makes more sense to me.
Right.
But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, and somebody says, your gut knows they have no substance of authenticity to them. Your gut knows, like your heart will always know if the information is real. But there's Tom Montauk. He's wrote an amazing book on infiltration in the extraterrestrial community and the channelers and all that stuff. And that comes up a lot is love. Like, oh, how can you argue with love, right? You can't. But these groups, like, do you don't think they've thought of that too? And this is where the whole false light comes in. And
Right.
there's literal spells. It's like an enchantment spell. You're so enchanted by the information. You think it's black magic. You think that you're in love or your heart is, this
Yeah.
is a heartfelt message, but you're actually under a spell. You're being enchanted, and this is something like they do. This is how the false light operates, and this happens, with very famous people even that we all love. Well, certainly they wouldn't be lying to us. I can feel it. No, you're enchanted. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what we have. That's what we have to, know ourselves. And like, is this an organic feeling? Like, am I actually feeling love here? Or is this something that's mimicking love? And we've been so far removed from what love even is, unconditional love, and how that even feels, that we can be tricked because we're like, what is this feeling? I've never felt it before. It must be real. So, like, this is a tricky battlefield. It's a tricky game. And just
Yeah.
understand that, like, they've thought of it all, right? So, if we're tapping into this stuff and it feels like it feels good, it doesn't mean necessarily. I'm not saying that all the stuff isn't real, because I know channelers and I know some of them that are absolutely, I feel it in my heart
Yep.
and my gut that they are tapping into something pure and organic. But then I know some other ones that I'm just like, I can't get on board with that. I'm sorry, there's something off, you know?
Yeah. And we should all do that, right? With our information. Like, I think it's so important. I don't know that I think at the beginning of my awakening, and a lot of people that I've spoken to, I think we all fell for at least one person, if not more, that we really thought had the information and that they thought. And I heard you talk about one time, um, someone that you had on as a guest, and it's like not anything like what you thought this person was, because you see they're not spiritual at all and they're not, it's just different. It's just different, and we have to trust ourselves and recognize that. And even if it's not channeling, but it's just information about what's going on right now and all of that, like, really trust yourself. If there's an aspect of it that doesn't make sense to you, that's okay. And you don't have to
Right.
throw the baby out with the bathwater, but use your discernment, because like we were talking about creating in the now and all of us having our own co-creation in reality. What's true for someone might not necessarily be 100% true for you. Could be similar. We're in the same field of existence right now, so there's things about it that could be similar, but that doesn't mean that everything that this person is getting is going to be for you and for
Right.
your trajectory moving forward, and that's okay. It's not a bad thing. It's just, you have to trust in what you're getting yourself. And if something doesn't sound exactly right, then you don't have to accept it as that. Because when it
Right.
doesn't come out that way, if people are giving, I remember back, I used to watch someone and he was always giving like dates for everything. And then the dates wouldn't happen. And then people were getting really mad and like turning on him and things like that. And sometimes the stuff would happen years later, like years. And it doesn't mean everything that he said was wrong. It was just that, the dates that he was giving was wrong. So, I don't know. I try to give some leeway with that, but I've just come to the place where really I ask my guidance about it. And if I don't get an answer right away, I figure it's because it's not for me right now. There's other things that I need to be focusing on, and
Right.
it'll come to me when it needs to. But I don't know. That's what it
Mhm.
starts and finishes for me, is my own guidance.
Yeah. And that's a great segue into the last thing I'd like to cover before we wrap this up is that, I'm being very hard on the channel is right now. I understand and all that information. Only because I want other people to question it. I don't want everyone to just haphazardly give their power away to someone outside of themselves just because it's coming from said source, right?
Right.
Just keep all this stuff in mind because I'm telling you right now that yes, channelers are real. People are communicating with real beings, and there are beings here to help. And they are working through people, and people are coming online and tapping into these abilities. It's all real. But like I said, it's also being hijacked. So just be aware moving forward.
Yeah.
That being said, what you offer is psychic readings and spiritual guidance and stuff like that. I've had a session with you, and if I didn't think it was organic, I wouldn't be doing this interview. You know what I'm saying? So
Thank you.
I absolutely believe that you're tapping into something real, and the people that aren't tapping into something real aren't even having these conversations. They're not comfortable with having these conversations, right? And that's
Yeah.
another indicator. That's another red flag. So the fact that you're sitting here like openly having this conversation, discussing all the possibilities, what could go wrong, what could be real, and still like just your energy, you haven't nudged. Like yeah, I mean you haven't budged. I mean your energy, you're just solid in what you know you're tapping into, and I think that's beautiful. So
Thank you.
please let everyone know kind of what you offer when they book a session and what to expect to get out of it whenever they do sign up.
I had a hard time trying to come up with a name for it because it's been so different for everyone. I just called it one on one because there are times now that I definitely see parallel timelines and lives. I put on there as past lives because that's people's understanding. It's not. My belief is that it's parallel. It's all happening in the now, but I definitely see past lives for people. I also can tap into energy fields. I'll see colors around people. I can see blockages with people. And it's not medical advice or anything like that, but sometimes I can see something where maybe it would be beneficial to you. You can take it or leave it with food or changing up things for that. Sometimes I can see guidance for people. I've had um, actual ETs present. Sometimes they look kind of ethereal, or sometimes I'll just get a picture of them in my mind's eye for people. I've had recently, probably over the last 4 to 6 months, I've started having people that have passed um, coming in, and that's kind of a newer thing for me. Although it happened for me myself personally, I wasn't doing it for other people, and that's something now that I've noticed. And I'm also starting to get physical sensations in different areas and stuff now. And when I talk to people, I had a woman that I did a session with, and before 2 days before, my right shoulder was killing me, like killing me. I was saying to John, something's wrong. Like I think I have to go to the doctor. I don't know what's going on. I had my session with this woman. She was out of work on disability right now because of her shoulder. And after my session, it was gone. So that's new. I mean, that was crazy. That's the most extreme version, but I'll get different things, a pain somewhere or something like that, and I'll have something. So that's something that can go on. Or like I had one that she just wanted help with dreams and to kind of see what I thought interpretation dream wise. And then I can also pull cards. I'll pull tarot cards. So there's not one thing. That's why I called it a one-on-one because I don't know what's going to come in. Um, those are all things that can happen. It's not a promise because it's different for everyone. It's very individual. But I do it for
Mhm.
30 minutes or an hour. And then I also am offering a 30-minute meditation consultation because after my book, that was the thing that I noticed people reached out to me the most for. It was like, well, but how do you do that? Well, how do you get past this? And I can't focus. So I'll do a 30-minute consultation for meditation, kind of find out what your things are, give you some um, ideas, things you can work on, and then we'll meet back up. It's part of it. That's included, maybe about 15 minutes, and we'll just go over what it was. And if you want to work together, I will do meditations with you. I will help you if there's something you're trying to manifest to even write something out for a meditation. Um, so it's whatever, people want, but I personally feel like meditation is the main key. So for me, that was something that I wanted to make sure that I helped people with if they feel like they need that.
Yeah, beautifully said. And for those who have been here the whole time today, thank you. But earlier she was talking about that model and you were like seeing it and you were like expanding it and moving it around almost like you had like an augmented reality display in front of you, right? But that's kind of what I experienced when I had the session with you. Like stuff was coming through and you were like seeing it and like relaying the information in real time. And I thought it was really fascinating and really helpful in a lot of ways. And I can't recommend it enough. You know, you give me a lot to take home after that and a lot of homework to do. It wasn't just like I did the session and that was it. Like I got a lot out of it. And, you know, maybe gave me a couple crystals to go buy and I had to spend some money there. But, you know, uh, but no, it really resonated with, you know, everything that came through. So just anyone listening to this, all of her links are below in the description, the website, the book, the link to her book, and the YouTube channel for your
Thank you.
podcast. It's all in the description. Go follow her, like, subscribe, check it all out. Buy the book, book a session. It's worth it. Lisa's amazing. If you've been here the whole time, you know that she's really tapping into something special. And who knows what can come through. It's weird times ahead. So any clarity that we can get moving forward is much appreciated. So thank you for doing what you do, Lisa, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm so happy that I got to spend time with you again. I always enjoy having conversations with you.
Yeah. And any last words to the audience before we wrap this up?
No, if a time that I have doesn't work out for you, you can always email me via the website and work it out if you're in a different time zone. I had to do that for someone in Australia. It's not a problem. Just let me know and we'll work something out.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Lisa,
Thank you.
and enjoy the rest of your day. And until next time, thank you guys for tuning in. We love you, and we will see you next week. Good night or
Thank
good
you.
afternoon.